All right, how are we doing? I'm going to give this a second just to let some people trickle in, and then we'll officially get started. So, what I want to do with tonight's stream is I want to discuss basically my coming out story. Because I realized that I've been, hang on, this light is super bright. We're going to move that out of the way. Holy shit. That's super bright, isn't it? Hang on. We're gonna experiment a bit with lighting. There we go. That's nice. Okay, so what I want to discuss tonight is basically my coming out story because whenever I was first, hey, Under the Thunder, comrade, how are you? Welcome. Um, Whenever I was first kind of formulating the idea for this channel, I had in my mind an idea for doing like a multi-part series, basically talking about my childhood, being raised in the church, and sort of my journey where I first started realizing something was different about me, and how those feelings led to me eventually discovering that I am trans, um, and how I was able to basically escape the grasp of religion and get to the point I am now where I am atheist. I am happily trans, queer as hell, polyamorous, pansexual, and basically just the happiest I've ever been in my body, in my identity, because it's something I chose for myself, you know? Mavity, hey, how are you? I haven't seen you in a while. Welcome to our little party. This is a little different, but I thought this would be fun to do. Um, so just so we're not like stringing this along too much, I have some notes that I have written down just to make sure there's some structure to this. And basically, what I want to start with is for those of y'all know, I was born in San Antonio, Texas, and I was raised in a small town in East Texas. Um, and some of my earliest memories of myself were I remember whenever I was about 5 or 6 years old. That I was really awkward in school. Like, I noticed that boys in class didn't like being around me, and they would ask me questions like, why do you act like a girl? Why are you so feminine? Why are you so weird around us? And little me's over here like, I don't know, I'm just trying to be myself. Help me. Like, it was weird because I felt like I was being targeted for something that I couldn't help. I knew that like my natural personality was I was very gentle. I was very open and loving. I was very understanding. I was very like nuanced. I wasn't rough in my play. I didn't enjoy being around boys. You know, like they would always be like play wrestling. They'd be doing sports. Even just the way they talked, it kind of felt to me like I was on a different wavelength from them, where it's not necessarily like being a more feminine boy, but like I literally didn't understand boys at all. It's like there was just this complete disconnect um, between me and them. And like this was little 6-year-old me. You know, like the whole myth the conservatives and evangelicals love to spin about how, well, their kids are too young. They couldn't possibly understand the concept of gender, blah, 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 blah. The thing with me was, even though I didn't have the proper language and knowledge to say that I was trans, like I knew deep down intrinsically that something was different about me. There was something that was separating me from boys in class. And it wasn't something, no, I get you too sometimes about I don't understand anyone else. Listen, there I have those moments too. We all do. But it honestly it felt like there was this invisible wall separating me from boys. And little 6-year-old me, that didn't really make sense to me. I was like, why do I feel so completely separate? But whenever I'm around girls, I feel like I'm one and the same with them. You know, I thought like them, I acted like them, I talked like them, and I felt like I didn't have the thought of I'm supposed to be one of them because I was too young to have that thought. But there was just some connection I had with them that I didn't have with anyone else. Um, and this really progressed in church whenever there were clergy members and other kids in Sunday school who also poked at me for being feminine. They were just like, how can you be a righteous man of God if you're acting like so and so? Evangelism in East Texas is toxic. For those of y'all who haven't been in East Texas, basically how the evangelical church works there, it doesn't matter which sect of the church you're in, whether it's Baptist, Methodist, Lutheran, Episcopal, it doesn't matter. The idea of gender roles is first and foremost. If you don't fulfill the very stereotypical gender role to like a T, you're seen as like there's something wrong with you. You're not right in the eyes of God. You can't fulfill the holy mission that's been placed in front of you because you're not fulfilling the role that God has made for you. Which, like, my dad, even though he was religious, he bought me a bunch of science books as a kid. And I don't think he realized that what this did was it raised me with a love, like it basically I had a love and respect for the scientific method even as a child. I wanted evidence. I wanted to know that if you tell me something, that you can give me enough evidence to believe that. Um, and the reason that going into like middle school, I felt pressured into believing religion itself was it basically felt to me like if I didn't accept these beliefs, I would be excommunicated, that I wouldn't be accepted, that I would forever be like this broken human being who would never find value in life because I didn't fit the box that cis men typically do, that somehow it just meant there was something wrong with me and that God would never favor me. And a lot of this pressure to think this way came from my family, where I remember distinctly my dad, like, anytime a pride parade would come on TV, he would make comments of, like, oh God, it's the Rainbow Brigade again. And just completely ridiculous things like this. Or anytime a gay couple would kiss on TV, my mom would just be like, like react in disgust. And I'm just over here like, they're just people being themselves. They love differently. So what? But because of just the constant pressure that was put on me, not only from my religious parents, but from the church and from the culture there, I basically felt like I had to conform to be accepted. And that if I didn't conform to the societal values in the area, that I would be a target for bullying. I would be a target for abuse. And whenever I was already struggling with dysphoria, but like I didn't realize it was dysphoria, I was like, okay, the only thing that's going to keep me safe is I hide these things I'm feeling and basically pretend like nothing's wrong. Try to fit in and see if that helps. The only issue is I couldn't fit in. Um, Whenever I was 8 years old, my parents took me to a psychiatrist. And keep in mind, this was in 1996. At the time, the psychiatrist diagnosed me with Asperger's because the symptoms of that and gender dysphoria actually very closely parallel one another. And there wasn't much research at the time of either or. I've since come to find out that I have dysphoria. I'm not on the spectrum, but at the time I didn't know that. Mabby is saying, what church was it? The one you grew up in, evangelical? So I grew up in a Baptist church. Um, it was intense. Kids can't possibly understand the concept of gender. Sounds like it's a social construct. It'd be funny if that were true, wouldn't it? It's almost like social constructs are created to keep people in boxes and control them. What? No way. It couldn't be. I'm racist against Southerners. I mean, yeah, I might be biased because I grew up in Texas, but I definitely feel that way. Conditional love is awful. Acceptance isn't possible with that. No, that's absolutely so. one of the biggest things about the type of religion that I was raised in, and I learned this from my Baptist church in East Texas, is love to them is very much conditional. And a little further on in here, I'm going to talk about how this connects to my parents and what I've been dealing with recently. But love to them is very much under a condition. If you fit certain things on a checklist, only then will you be fully accepted. Yeah, Aaron, you know exactly how I feel. I completely hated it too. Like you're treated as like if you don't fit all of those check marks, you're alienated and you're immediately marked as the other. You're this thing that everyone is targeting when you've done absolutely nothing wrong yourself. And it's the worst feeling in the world. Um, Although what was funny was I apparently there was a Sunday school class where my teacher talked about the creation story, and at the end, what she said I did was I raised my hand, and I was like, "So that's really interesting, but you want to know how it really happens?" And I went into a spiel explaining the Big Bang. So, listen, even then, I was a young girl of science. Um, but no, again, like this was before I was essentially like forced to fall in line with the church. Like there was still that little bit of me that felt like, well, I should be able to think how I want. There's nothing wrong with like being myself, having my own autonomy, is there? Um, Things got really bad in junior high and high school for me. I remember specifically going into junior high that bullying got really bad. I was physically assaulted probably once or twice a week. I didn't have friends. I didn't really talk to people in class. And it kind of felt to me like because I had now kind of repressed so many feelings, I had ignored all of these incredibly important things that like I knew I needed to address, but I felt like if I let these feelings out, if I tried to explore myself, it would put me in danger. The only choice I felt like I had was to essentially just hide everything or try to keep everything repressed. And what it did was I started disassociating. I started having really bad depressive periods. I suffered long periods of suicidal ideation because it essentially made me feel like my life had no purpose. I was like, if I can't be myself and I have to be this thing that people tell me to be, and if I'm this thing, that's the only way I'm going to be accepted, then like you're essentially giving up everything else. And I I think after a while, the reason I started kind of believing in the Christian God, and again, whenever I say these things, this is not necessarily to like disrespect anyone else who is religious. If you are a religious person yourself, it is your choice to believe that. But from my perspective, I see the harm that religion has done. I see how it's used to control people. It's used to keep them in these boxes, and it's used to tell them it's basically psychological abuse where they're the captor and you're the captive, and they're constantly holding a gun over your head, and it's like the only way you're going to be welcomed into paradise and the only way you're ever going to be seen as a worthy human being is if you give up everything that you are and you follow these incredibly unhealthy and wildly unrealistic like lifestyles, you know? Like you have to twist your behavior, you have to change your identity. You can't venture too far out of this. You can't present certain ways, you can't act certain ways, you can't love in certain ways. Um and Mabity, yeah, no, it absolutely feels contagious. I had anger problems as a kid because I didn't have a way to healthily vent any of these feelings because I was at conflict with my identity. I was at conflict with my beliefs. I was at conflict with my family. I was at conflict with my friends. And I was essentially being denied my humanity. So it was wild. And what really made it worse was kind of what gender roles are like in the South. So for those of y'all who have not been, heteronormativity is toxic to a degree I didn't think was possible in the South. You had a healthy response of anger to the environment. That's true, actually. That's very true. I think it's one of those things where there's still a little bit of me that was like grounded in reality, that I knew this was wrong. I knew that it was so wrong to do this to another person, to tell them all these things, to basically tell them that like they're a dirty sinner, that they're completely worthless in the eyes of God unless they give themselves up to follow this sky wizard that no one has ever seen. They're sitting here, sorry, I get really heated about this, but they're sitting there banging this book on the pulpit and they're saying that this is the only true thing in the world when this book can't be proven outside of itself. There's no scientific evidence for God or any of these things that happen in the Bible. And whenever I'm like, well, why am I supposed to believe in this thing? They're like, just have faith. And I'm like, the only thing faith is saying you should believe this even though there's no evidence whatsoever and no good reason to believe it. That's all faith is to me. And this was just being yelled at me constantly that I should doubt science, that I should doubt psychologists. And I think this is where, especially going into junior high, it started to build my feelings of almost disgust towards the queer community, because I was being told by the church that like these people are somehow like they've fallen out of favor with God. They've chosen to like, I don't know what the verse in the Bible is, but it's whenever they've essentially chosen to follow their own desires instead of choosing to follow what God wants for them. And I think what that did, along with my parents' very vocal homophobia and transphobia, is it started ingraining homophobia and transphobia in me, because it wasn't that I believed these things myself, but these were the things I was exposed to 24/7. I was exposed to hypermasculinity in the men in East Texas, where they would all like, they were supposed to be like physically aggressive. They were supposed to like drink beer. They were supposed to be sexist towards women. They're supposed to drive the big trucks. And there's this idea where it's like, if you don't fit those stereotypes, then there's something wrong with you. You're seen as weak. You're seen as not worthy, and you're not seen as strong or as strong as others. And the more that I've really, no, seriously, Aaron, the hypermasculinity in the South is awful. And what I've really come to realize is like the more I've studied about conservatism, even about like fascism, and the way like America as a whole is run right now, is like the whole modus operandi of America is only the strong survive. Where if you're seen as weak, if you're seen as like the other, if you don't fit these very super like patriotic, violent, xenophobic stereotypes, like if you don't fit that personality, then somehow like you're not patriotic enough or you're not American enough. You essentially have a target put on your back and you are seen as the weak person. But these people in the White House, these people who encourage like wars, they encourage you to insult immigrants, they encourage you to say like, fuck you, got mine. That's seen as strength. And what it boils down to is empathy is seen as weakness. And I'm completely forgetting the antonym of empathy. Apathy. Apathy is seen as strength. If you only care about yourself, if you're selfish and you continue to give to your good old corporate daddy, then that means you're strong. And it's the exact same thing with Christianity, where those who devote themselves to God, they give themselves up and they intentionally put themselves into these very tight boxes that gains them favor. Therefore, because they're able to give themselves up, that means they're stronger, when all you've done is you've just let yourself be brainwashed into this belief system that doesn't even mean anything. I'm like, okay, listen, if humans didn't exist, would God mean anything? If any Christian can honestly answer yes to that, then they really need to do some kind of like reassessing of their priorities. Um, and it only, hang on, I'm going through like pictures on a Pinterest folder right now just so I can keep all these like somewhat organized. I'm trying over here. Um, where I think this always seemed weird to me because like you're saying your God has made a lot of mistakes. Disdain, not happy. Thank you, Comrade Guapo. You're lovely. I appreciate you. You're saying your God has made a lot of mistakes. Yeah, okay, exactly. So that's the thing is there's this idea that God is omnipotent. He is all powerful and he's all knowing. But if he makes mistakes, he's not omnipotent. He's not all powerful. But also like if the world is full of sin and certain things are out of control, he can't be all knowing because there are things that are happening that he doesn't know. So there are all of these contradictions already. Um, and what happened was, hello, hi, how are you doing? I just saw you pop in the chats. Gods, I wish these people would actually study how natural selection works. It's nothing about strength, it's about the ability to reproduce in a particular environment. It's not rocket science. Exactly. No, I was talking to someone earlier about how whenever Christians try to dismiss evolution, I'm like, how do you think we got here in the first place? I'm like, what happened was with our common ancestor that existed hundreds of thousands of years ago, the conditions at the time were favorable enough to let us rocket off in a different direction and evolve to what we are now. But Christians, like, have any of y'all ever watched people like Kent Hovind and Kim Ham? Because these people, my mom loves them to death. She watched like a lot of. Thank you. I always get a lot of compliments like on my eyes, and I appreciate that. But no, so like Focus on the Family, the 700 Club, Ken Ham, Kent Hovind. These were basically like far right evangelical media hosts in media networks, to where they would constantly espouse like anti-evolution rhetoric. They would talk about like young Earth creationism, about how the flood happened and that's what created the Grand Canyon. Just all of these insane. Yes, Apologia, Vice Rhino. I love especially like Mr. Atheist, Shannon Q, Cirrus the Skeptic. These were the channels that really helped me like leave religion permanently. Aaron, you're so sweet. Thank you. Everyone's just going, your eyes are so pretty right now. And I'm just like, thank you. um, so I think for me, what the first event was that started pulling me out of religion was whenever I met my first queer friend in college. He was gay. He's atheist, and I remember at first, like I was a little bit nervous to talk to him because again, I had all of this ingrained homophobia in myself. But the more I got to know him, the more I saw him as just like a normal human being. It's like he's a totally functional, healthy human being, and he was one of the sweetest people I've ever met in my life. And Carl Sagan's PBS Cosmos series to help me leave religion. I've actually never seen Carl Sagan's Cosmos series. I've only seen the Neil deGrasse Tyson one. But if it's worth it, I would like to see the Carl Sagan one at some point because I love Carl Sagan's writings. He and Christopher Hitchens and Rod. Hang on. Uncomplete Dawkins. Dawkins. First name. Oh my God, I have the worst memory. Um, Richard Dawkins. Hey, yeah, Richard Dawkins. Has anyone here ever watched like Aaron Raw, Matt Dillahunty, Seth Andrews of The Thinking Atheist? Are any of y'all like fans of them? Um, because I started obsessively watching them in college, and like absolutely loved their content. And what it helped me do was I started to realize that my parents were gaslighting me to try to keep me in religion. So what I started seeing from them was my dad one time. He and I were having a political discussion, and he essentially said to my face, he was like, I feel like you've been in the church or you've been in college too long. And I just looked at him like, what does that mean? Like, excuse me? Um, and this was already at the time where whenever I met my first queer friend and then I started meeting others in the community, I started putting pieces together about my own dysphoria. And I started having these little revelations about myself where I was like, it's probably not normal to have dreams where I'm a woman and then whenever I wake up, I'm sad. I was like, I feel like this doesn't happen to cis people typically. So that was my first pretty significant red flag. I also found out that apparently most of my college classmates were convinced I was either gay or was secretly trans, and they didn't tell me this until after I came out. But it was one of those things where I couldn't hide this side of myself. Like I was trying so hard to repress these characteristics, but like one of the things about being trans sometimes is there's certain things that just come out. There's certain parts of yourself you cannot hide from the world. And that's just because it's you. These things that you are, these behavioral characteristics, these feelings that you have, it's just a natural part of you. And the more you try to hide it, it's like you're holding a dam back and like eventually it's going to burst. Funny how other people see it first. Isn't seriously, Jandy? No, absolutely. Like, one of my old roommates, actually, Cody, whenever I came out, he messaged me and he was like, oh my God, it all makes sense now. And I was like, why didn't you say something? um, but I think he recognized like I was in a very vulnerable place mentally at the time. Um, Whenever I was in college, I was probably at the lowest place uh, mentally and emotionally of my life. There were 2 points where I was in my kitchen and I opened the knife drawer and I just stared at it. I didn't do anything, but there was this part of me that was like, you're miserable. You hate yourself. You hate your body. You hate your voice. I literally felt like my personality was nothing more than just like a patchwork of other people I saw. But because I didn't understand what a cis man acts like, nothing that I was genuine. Now, like the person you see here, there were little bits of her there, but mostly I tried to hide those parts of myself. But it ended up coming off like I was awkward. I didn't really have that many genuine interests. I didn't have a desire for life. I didn't have motivations to do things for myself. And it got to a point where I almost felt like I was watching someone else live their life, but I wasn't actively engaged. Like I was so disconnected from myself that it was literally like I was just drifting through life at that point. Like things were happening to me, but I wasn't directly engaged in any of it. I wasn't interested and I had no desire to be engaged with any of it. I shut myself in my apartment. I didn't really ever talk to friends. And I ended up failing out of one semester of college just because I was so horrifically depressed from dysphoria that it's like I couldn't function as a person. Um, and I had a really bad downward spiral of probably 3 years. Um, to where now, 2017 and before, probably 85% of my memories are gone. Like literally, they're just massive blank slates where they're like little tiny bits and pieces. But because of the trauma that I experienced from not allowing myself to just be able to just be, I couldn't let myself just exist. I like a cloud brain. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Oh my, that's such a good way to say it. I love that. I'm gonna remember that. Um, yeah, no, it's like you're not even a person anymore. And if there's a hell, I went through it. And it was the worst feeling in the world because it was like at any moment I would just disappear from existence because I didn't have anything. The average viewer, hey, so we are talking about my coming out story, how I discovered that I was trans and basically escaped religion. So lots of good juicy stuff. This is what the people come for, right? I don't know. I'm still new to this. Um, but no, and there was one point in particular where I came really close to actually committing suicide, but I didn't because there was that little part of me that was like, if you stop now, you are never going to have a chance to figure out like who you actually are. You will never have a chance to put these things together and just see, to just see if you're like really figure out if you're right. I almost didn't give myself that chance. And it's really strange to think that like had I done that, me here, like I wouldn't be here. Like all of the people in my life right now, this opportunity I have with this platform now to like do as much good as I can. All the incredible creators I've already met so far, and like all the doors that are opening up for me. If I had ended my life, then I wouldn't have any of this. I wouldn't be here. And there really are some times where I'm like, I don't really understand why I'm still alive, but I'm grateful for it, you know? And it's one of those things where it's like, I think a lot of people don't understand, like, especially those who aren't trans, they don't realize what kind of hell you go through whenever you're grappling with dysphoria, but you're grappling with wanting to be accepted by your family and your friends. Like you realize if I accept myself, there's a chance that I'm going to lose everything and I won't have that support network anymore. And you feel like because of how religion tries to indoctrinate you, of how they basically make you feel like God is the most important thing in the world. And then you have the hierarchy of God, the family, and then you, to where you feel like if you let your family down, you're not just letting your family down, but you're letting this all powerful deity down as well. And anything you do that disgraces your family is a disgrace to God. It's very much like, I don't know how much y'all know about Indian culture and Muslims who have like arranged marriages. I have a friend who actually ran away from her parents because they were trying to put her in an arranged marriage, and they were incredibly like emotionally, physically abusive. And she finally decided that she had had enough, but she was terrified that by doing this, that she would never have like a family like network of people around her. She felt like she would disgrace her family because in their tradition is going along with the arranged marriages and accepting whatever your parents say, and if you go against what your parents say, you bring dishonor upon them. And they don't question if it's wrong. All they've been told is that because it's tradition, it's right, period, and you don't go against that. So regardless of like all the harm they're doing, not just to themselves, but like to their family, to these children, these innocent children who don't know any better, there are these very young souls who just want to learn and understand the world, and they're being told that like they won't be accepted unless they follow a very strict path. Like you're telling a child that they'll essentially burn in hell because they don't follow your particular deity. And I can't I can't support that. I can't. And like especially hearing whenever she was telling me about how she escaped, she ran away from home and her parents essentially like stalked her. They would try to figure out where she worked. They would try to figure out where she lived. They would constantly send her messages of like, well, what do you think your younger sisters would think? Well, what do you think the rest of the family thinks? Don't you know how much dishonor this has brought upon us? Don't you know how ashamed we are of you? And even though the Christian household I was raised in wasn't that intense, that very same attitude was there, where if I didn't fulfill that role, I would never be seen as like truly accepted by my family. And no, it is very much a mobster mentality. It's Stockholm syndrome, where you feel like you almost come to find an acceptance and a love for the situation you're in. You don't understand at some point how much harm is being done to you, but you just know that you have to do this, and that's all there is to it. Shame is the worst. Okay, to segue into me discovering that I was trans, let's talk about shame, because this will be a good way into how I finally came out. So, religious shame is probably the most powerful and the most evil weapon that the church has. Because what they do is, for those of y'all who aren't raised in the church, you're not entirely aware of like the inner workings of it. Um, my Baptist church basically said that like if you're a woman and you dress scantily clad, it's shameful because you're going to make all the men lust after you. If you listen to heavy metal music or music that talks about drugs or has dirty language, you are poisoning your minds with all these ungodly words. Therefore, it's shameful. If you read things, if you watch movies that have very objectionable things in them, it's seen as shameful. I was literally at a point where if music had curse words in it, I wouldn't listen to it. Like, this was how far down I was in this rabbit hole, because I didn't realize that what they were teaching me was to be ashamed of completely normal things. They made me ashamed of sex. They made me ashamed of like masturbation. They made me ashamed of like R-rated films. They made me ashamed of certain types of music. They made me ashamed about my body. They made me ashamed to feel to be around women. They made me ashamed to want to express myself in certain ways, to express certain thoughts. They indoctrinate you into shaming yourself, so they just have to drop a keyword and then you did the work for them. Yeah, seriously, no, that's exactly right. This is how the church works, is they put all of the seeds in place, and here's the thing I think a lot of people don't give them credit for. The church is very smart with how people work. Because any type of indoctrination, whether it's religious indoctrination, political indoctrination, whatever it is, these people have a very good understanding of how the human mind works, and they know how to kind of like very slowly weed their way into your own way of thinking, and they very slowly, little by little, deprogram you. So those feelings of wanting to be your own independent person, of wanting to pursue like your own goals in life. Say you're a woman who's raised in the Baptist church. They will little by little worm it into you that you have to breed, that you have to raise a family, that God smiles upon those who carry the species forward. And over time, those people start to accept it because they're like, oh, it'll bring favor upon me. I'll be seen as good in the eyes of God. And as time goes on, they no longer question it. It's become so normalized that they don't think to actually like question what it is they're being told. And that's why they focus on the family. Exactly. Here's the thing. If you start them young, you can hook them more easily, because whenever kids are like 5 or 6, they are still very, very vulnerable to misinformation. They're very vulnerable to being told certain things that sound very fantastical. They sound very appealing. Like if you tell kids, oh yeah, there's this person in the sky who watches over you and he'll always be there for you. And look at all these things he did. He rescued a person from the mouth of a whale. Whoa! And like these little kids are just like, oh, like completely amazed because they have huge imaginations, but they're not thinking about reality. They're thinking about these very fantastical scenarios, and they haven't been told to know the difference between reality and fantasy. So what the church does is it implants this fantasy in your head little by little, and they start you when you're young so they can get their hooks in you and hold on to you and slowly drag you under. But you have to start them off young. Like, why do you think Sunday schools are so intense with getting the kids enrolled, getting them as involved as possible? Our government, or it's become societally understood, even by those not religious, our government has become a cult. And you believe what your parents tell you. No, exactly. So here's the thing. Jandy and Mavity, both of y'all are actually pointing out two parts of a very similar hierarchy. In that basically, again, whenever I was talking about tradition, it's seen as dishonorable to question your parents. So if your church says that something is true, that belief is passed on to the parents, and those parents pass those beliefs on to you. So whenever the parents say that something is true and it's not to be questioned, it's seen as dishonorable if you don't accept those beliefs. And very much like the church with the parents, the church places it almost like a moral command on the parents to implant these beliefs into the kids. And that if they don't, they've somehow failed in the eyes of God. No, exactly. The Bible is the most popular fictional book ever to you. No, that's perfect. The Bible is absolutely the most popular work of fiction in history. Not rude enough. No, it is mythology. It's like mythology and some of the worst written fanfic I've ever heard in my life. Hmm. How many of y'all know this? Okay. Christianity is nothing more than a copy and paste of Judaism, paganism, and Zoroastrianism. It is a copy and paste of those three, and there is not a single original element to it. Christians can tell you this all they want, but if you study these older ancient religions, the Bible itself is nothing more than a patchwork of all of these older religions, but it's passed off as something that's like wholly original and true and like is the only thing in the universe that matters. Like this is the truth and nothing else. Again, even though it can't be proven outside of itself, I'm just like, y'all, here's the thing. If your book cannot be proven to be true outside of itself, don't you think that's kind of a problem? Um, so again, keeping all of this in mind, the hierarchy of the church to the family and then you, of if you break out of certain roles, you're seen as unwanted, as unacceptable in the eyes of God. The point I finally got to was my kind of realizations of my being trans were going stronger and stronger and stronger until I finally sat down one night and I was like, I'm going to study what gender dysphoria is, and I'm going to read testimonials from trans people, and I'm going to see if I can put this together for myself. It was written as poetry and then taken as reality because it was popular and a way to control people. No, okay, see, that's the thing, is the Bible is very much a product of its time. Like, I always thought it was weird whenever people tried to take the Bible and apply it to modern culture because the Bible was written 2,000 years ago. So to try to compare it and like apply it to modern day society when we have progressed so much, whenever they wrote the Bible, they didn't know anything about science. They didn't know that the earth orbited the sun. These people didn't understand the first thing about the human mind, about biology, about how the world works, about how nature works, about evolution, about space, about any of that. None of this was understood at the time, and yet somehow we're supposed to take this book and see it as true nowadays as it was then. It's madness to me. And like I think like I will agree that there are certain moral principles in the Bible that can be applied to modern society that are good, but those moral principles are something you can find in any other work of art. You can find them in philosophy. You can find it in older stories like Gilgamesh. You can find it in Plato. These were just accepted values of the time. Like people pre-Christianity were like, hey, we should probably only do that which serves to better humanity, right? That was before the Bible. The Bible did not invent morals. The Bible did not invent that we should take care of each other. These were already well-established beliefs, but just like Christianity stole and ripped off paganism, They try to act like, oh no, our God is the God of morality. Our God is the God of, treating everyone as the same. No, bullshit. It didn't. I'm sorry. No, you ripped off all these values that already existed in society. You do not get to claim these things for yourself. They called it the Bible because Babel was already taken. Oh, I love that. Yeah. It's oh, speaking of Babel, whenever people like speak in tongues, I'm like, I'm sorry, but the only thing you're doing right now is babbling. None of this is real. Like, get out of here. And it's been through how many translations and interpretations? Yeah, exactly. So, pronounce it as Bibble and piss them off. Okay, but people in my church said Bibble, so but yeah. No, that's the thing about the Bible is whenever it was first written 2,000 years ago, there were no strict regulations on translations. So they were essentially allowed to translate it as many times as they wanted. They were allowed to put in whatever they wanted and remove whatever they wanted, which means that the Bible that we see now is not even close to, yes, oh, Texas, yeah, no. I swear Texas has like its own language as far as how they talk about religion in the Bible. It's it's something. Um, but no, like, because there were no strict regulations for translating the Bible, basically it means that the Bible that we have now and the God that exists now is not the God of the Bible. The God that Christians worship nowadays is not the God that they worshiped back then. They have over time changed it and reinterpreted God to the point where the idea of what God even is completely unrecognizable. I don't remember who, maybe Vosh, but they said that if your reason to not insert crime here is because the ex said so, there's something wrong with your morality. Yeah, no, that's the thing. If you need a book to tell you not to murder people, I'm a little bit worried about you as a person and your morals. Like, if you need this book of spells and mythology to say, hey, don't walk down the street and stab that dude in the face, that's bad. If you have to be told that, I don't think I want to be around you because that seems a little bit worrying. I'm not saying that person's a sociopath, but I feel like they might be a sociopath. But seems like a lot of conservatives and some religious people are the same. I'm not saying that becoming a sociopath or becoming apathetic or any of this is a result of conservative thought. I'm not saying that, but you're free to interpret my words however you want. Um, but no, I remember whenever I read what the symptoms of gender dysphoria were, that was the first time where I just kind of sat there and I was like, oh shit. Because I was like, yep, that. And I was like, I was experiencing every single one of them. I was like, okay, so that's a thing. Then I went on to Reddit and I started quick, hurry, clip that bit for blackmail. Listen, someone's gonna try to do this to me at some point where they clip something I say out of context. It's just part of being a public figure. Whatever. It is what it is. It's fine. But I started reading testimonials from people on Reddit who had come out as trans, and they basically talked about how they came to the realization that they were transgender. And the more I read these testimonials, the more and more I began to see like the disconnect in myself, the complete disconnect from my body and how I felt. The fact that like I had always felt this really intense shame over my body. The fact that like I felt like something was wrong with me because of the body I had, that there were certain things that weren't supposed to be there. I always felt like, why is my chest so flat? Why is my voice so deep? Why do I have body hair? Like these thoughts were regularly in my head, and I kept having to tell myself, Alice, I didn't refer to myself as Alice at the time, but it was like, Alice, this is not what a cis person does. And I finally had to realize that, like, listen, By running away from your identity, the only thing you're doing is you are making yourself more miserable. You're pushing yourself deeper into this depressive spiral. You are moving further and further away from feeling any sort of connection to yourself or meaning in life. And I was like, I don't want to reach the bottom of that pit, because there was that little part of me that felt like I needed to do something. Like there was something else I had to offer the world, and I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't let myself like just end. And after about a month of studying, I finally realized like I was trans. And that first realization moment where it all hit me and like all of the puzzle pieces connected, whenever I saw how everything I had struggled with as a teenager, all of my feelings of like insecurities, the inability to really relate to like cis men, the feelings of like being uncomfortable being intimate with women because of the parts I had that made me feel extremely dysphoric. The fact that I didn't feel at home with my own mind. Like I was told I had to act one way, but whenever I was told to act that way, it didn't fit how I felt inside. So I was like, well, why am I supposed to act this way? Like, it doesn't feel comfortable for me and it doesn't feel natural. That's the key. Um, I got to the point where I was just like, I realized that what I had been doing was I was living for the approval of my parents and I was living for the approval of the church. And I had never once lived for myself. Like I had never once really allowed myself to put my foot down and say like, I want to do this for myself. Like I want to have my own beliefs. I want to have my own autonomy. I want to feel respected in my decision to be my own person. Um, because my beliefs were not respected and are still not respected by my family. Like my parents both watch Fox News 24/7. It's bad. Um and for the longest time, like I believed the propaganda on there because that was the only source of knowledge I was being fed. Like I very much fell into like the things that like Glenn Beck would say, that Rush Limbaugh was saying. And you were surviving the best you could, and it's not your fault that it took a while to figure out. No, see, that's the thing. It's like the environment in East Texas was not conducive to me being able to discover that I was trans at an early age. Like most queer issues in East Texas are very much seen as taboo, where you don't talk about people who are gay or bisexual. You don't talk about the trans community. You don't talk about the kink community. You don't talk about polyamory. All of these things were just completely shut away from me, and I didn't have any opportunity to like ever meet another person from the community. I didn't have any opportunity to learn what being trans meant. I didn't have an opportunity to learn about the actual history of like American imperialism, about what our government, all the horrors that our government has committed across the world, all the failures of capitalism, all of the harm that evangelism, that religious indoctrination have done to families, have done to children, have done to women, have done to the law in general, in restricting abortions and restricting puberty blockers and making it almost impossible for trans people to exist. Like, I finally stepped back and I started studying things for myself. And not only was my mind just blown completely wide open by the realization that I was trans, but it's like I saw how the world worked for the first time. I saw how all of these systems of oppression are used to control people, to keep them in these very tight boxes. And then people are told, well, it's just the status quo. This is just how things are. They've been normalized to the point where people didn't question them. And that's why they're able to get away with these things. That's why religion is able to persist in the form it's in nowadays. Had a similar experience with a friend. We grazed the topic of gender, but he quickly pivoted to something else. The Matrix exposed. Yeah, no, people would immediately get really uncomfortable with that. It's because they don't want to face the fact that they've either been indoctrinated, or they don't want to face the truth of all these things they've been told. Um, Whenever I came out to my parents, Uh, this was essentially the moment I realized that my relationship with them would never be the same. Whenever I came out to my mom, she said a number of things that I will never be able to forgive her for. But I think the worst things were she said at one point, I asked God why you couldn't have just gotten cancer instead. My mother said that to me. My mother, who raised me and said that she loved me and said that she'd be there for me no matter what, the moment I come out to her in a very vulnerable moment, and I'm incredibly scared because this part of me that I'm coming to find, like, to discover and understand, like, this person I'm supposed to trust basically says to my face, it would have been better if you'd gotten cancer. And at that point, I should have ended the conversation, but she kept going. And she was like, well, you'll just be a caricature of yourself. This isn't who you are. Why would you want to like mutilate your body and all of these things? And what happened was it's as if she did a full 180 as a person. She showed me a side of herself that like I had never seen before. Yeah, how the hell can you say that to your own child? Exactly. Like, this is my mother who said all of these things to me. And it's like this is where I really saw in person what religion does to you. Is she didn't know how to parent anymore. She couldn't function as a parent. And she had become this really toxic source of the absolute worst kind of religion. She was gaslighting me, basically. Like, it was nothing more than psychological abuse. And I argued with her and I was like, this is just a part of who I am. I'm sorry. And she was like, well, God didn't make you that way. And I was like, I want you to prove to me right now that you know God said that you know what he wants for my life. If you're so certain about this, then you need to show me right now. And she couldn't. And I was like, well, how do you know any of this is true? And she's like, oh, I just know. And I'm like, that's not evidence. Your facts do not care about your feelings. Um, but I I didn't know how to react. Like, to hear that from your own parents when all you want to do is just to talk and be accepted and, like, at the very least be heard and understood and supported. I From that moment on, I felt separated from her. I was like, I can't talk to you about these things. And I don't want to talk to you if this is how you're going to react to me. Um, Whenever I came out to my father, yeah, basically what he said was, it doesn't matter what kind of surgeries you get, you're always going to be the man God made you to be, and there's nothing you can do to change that. And I'm like, thanks, Dad, for reminding me that this thing I've been trying to run away from my whole life will forever be connected to me. It's the same thing as people who use assigned male at birth, AMAB, as a way to delegitimize our experience. It's the same thing where they call us AMAB or say, oh, yeah, you're AMAB, right? They're intentionally connecting that to you. Weird how facts have a leftist bias. Isn't that funny? Like, how research and facts and things like that always tend to kind of happen more on the left, and superstition and ideology and bigotry tend to center around the right. Isn't that fascinating? We love that. Um, and my dad made the comments of, I feel like your friends in Austin aren't helping you. I think what you should do is find a Christian counselor. Like, oh, yes, I'm going to go back to the very same people who indoctrinated me and made me live 27 years of my life without a purpose and wanting to die the entire time. Why don't I have more of that? Yes, please. Like, why in my right mind would I ever do that? Um, Although this was probably a bad decision, but I came out to my dad as trans. And then I came out to him as atheist right after that. I was like, you know what? If I've already dropped one bomb on him, I may as well drop a second one just so we're on the same page. His reaction was bad. It was really bad. He started getting into this discussion about how whenever he went to school for it was a bachelor's of science in agriculture, he was like, yeah, so the thing is, it's like, there's just some things in science that can't be explained, but whenever you put God in, it just makes perfect sense. And I'm just like, that's the God of the gaps fallacy. That's not actually how that works. And then he had the gall to say to me, I'm not kidding, my father said this, are you ready? He was like, so I got a bachelor's of science in agriculture, so that makes me a scientist. Seriously? I started laughing my ass off at work whenever I saw that. I was just like, you cannot be serious with me right now. Um, so whenever all of this happened, after I had this reaction from my family, I had a decision I had to make. I was like, if I stay in Texas, I'm never going to be able to have the life I want for myself. I'm never going to be able to fully embrace myself. And I'm never going to be able to express myself the way I want to. I still have not told my dad that I'm trans. It's hard, Aaron. Like, there's a little part of me that feels like I shouldn't have said a word to my dad, but I was also like, at least from my position, and like, whether you decide to tell your parents or not, your choice is totally respectable. You do what you feel is best for you. That's the most important thing in the world. But I was like, I would rather tell them so I can see their reaction and I can see the truth of who they are. Like, are they willing to love and accept me, or are they so desperate to hold on to their religion that they would willingly give me up to continue holding on to this religion? Like, you're literally willing to give your own child up to hold on to a what if, just this nebulous I don't know. My mom completely accepts me. No, that's really good though, Aaron. Like, I don't have that with either of my parents, and I'm like, if you have at least one parent who accepts you whenever you do come out, that's a gift. It it really is. Hold on to her and tell you that like you love her, and just really really treasure that relationship, because a lot of queer people don't get that, you know. And it's good that you have that. It's really good that you have that, because like I know there's some times where like that helps, you know, because being trans is a difficult experience. It really is. um the fact that society is completely built against us, the fact that whenever I came out as trans and I accepted myself, I automatically lost so much privilege because of that. I, in a way, like lost my standing in society because I chose to embrace myself instead of being this thing that society wanted me to be. I was kicked like 7 or 8 rungs down the societal ladder. Um, but sometimes that's the price you pay. You pay a price to be yourself, but in my mind, I don't give a fuck about society and I don't care how society sees me. I'm going to accept and embrace myself and love myself for who I am, because who I am is precious. I'm the only me in existence, so I better be the best me that I can be, you know? Um and really overcoming like the ingrained transphobia and the homophobia from religion was incredibly difficult. Like, there are still times now where I'll see a gay couple kiss and I'll feel like that little instinctual reaction of disgust, but I'll recognize that like that's the result of that religious indoctrination. It's not the result of my feelings, because I think gay couples are the most adorable things in the world. I really do. Queer people are just cute in general. We're just super cute, I think, you know? Um, but like I've learned to separate my thoughts and reactions from thoughts and reactions that are the result of indoctrination. um you have to be willing to pay the price. You absolutely do. Especially since our society has made it so almost all of our supports are completely dependent on whatever family you randomly got. No, that's absolutely it. Like, you're given this family and that's it. But they also kind of plant this belief in you that you can't choose your family whenever Family is not blood. Family is who you choose. And that completely goes against the narrative of like typical American ideals of Christianity. That flies completely in the face of it, that you're willing to choose your own family and say that my blood family never accepted me for who I am. I'm going to go out and find a family that does. That completely flies in the face of American ideals. And that's why people like us tend to be so discriminated against. That's why we have such a hard time, is there aren't enough support systems in place for us to easily be able to find like that tribe of people, that group who sees us for who we are and just lets us live. They just let us exist. Like that's incredibly difficult, but like I'm hopeful because it's more common now than it was before, and I know that like as our lives go, like it's only going to get better and better and better. And people like Jessica Univ are not helping with the existence. Yeah, no, I do not stand Jessica Univ. She does not speak for me. She is not a representative of this community, period. We're also younger in appearance because do you know how cute you look when you take a fresh beginning, like self-acceptance? No, one of my friends commented they thought I got like I looked like 5, 6 years younger after I transitioned. And I'm like, it's just because I'm happy. Um, and speaking of happy, the decision I made for myself was to leave Texas. I was like, I will never be able to have the life I need for myself if I stay in Texas. I will never have the family of people around me that I need. I will never be able to be comfortable as myself. I will never be able to like function if I stay in the South, if I stay in this incredibly repressive, toxic environment that at every corner tries to push people like us back in the closet. I couldn't do that to myself anymore. And especially because I wanted to start learning about history. I wanted to like start learning about politics. I wanted to start learning about activism. I wanted to learn about the history of the queer community. I was like, I need to be in an environment that supports that. I need to be somewhere that fosters that growth, that lets me become who I need to be, that lets me expose myself to these things and treats facts as facts, you know? I expect that exact response from my narc member, so I'll never tell her. What's the point? Same strict Christian background I grew up in, Fox News 24/7, religious books everywhere. Yeah, no, that's exactly how it is they essentially, what Texas was for me was I was completely insulated. And this is how a lot of people in the South are, is they've completely insulated themselves in this environment where they are never exposed to how reality works. All they hear are the conspiracy theories about like Benghazi, about terrorism taking over America, about a Muslim invasion, about like an immigrant invasion, about how people are trying to take God out of schools, and just all of this nonsense about like the reason why school shootings are happening is because people aren't praying in school anymore. And like whenever you're outside of that bubble, you realize how utterly ridiculous all of it is. But whenever you're in that bubble, it's harder to really understand how the things you're being told are intentional mistruths that are used to keep you held down, to keep you believing something that's not true. And you're constantly told these things over and over again, so that way you never think to question any of it. You just accept it, and that's that. And I was like, I don't want to believe something just because someone tells me to believe it. I can't think that way, and I'm not going to be that way anymore. And after about 2 years of looking, I discovered Portland's. And I was like, you know what? I don't know anyone in Portland's, but I want to make a life for myself. And I want to be able to do something that I'm proud of myself for. I want to build something good for myself so that way I can go then and help other people. And March of last year, I packed all my things into my car and I drove from Austin, Texas. And for 4 days, I drove through New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, through the mountains, through really high plateaus, through some of the most breathtaking scenery I have ever seen in my life. I drove through the gorge east of Portland and came here, and I didn't realize how much my life would change when I came here. But the first thing that really struck me was that there are queer people everywhere in Portland. Oh my God. Like, it's amazing. Like, my first day downtown, I was just looking around like, you're all so beautiful and there's so many of you. Ah! Like, actually fangirling over here. Um, the subreddit Raised by Narcissists. Yes, I'm actually subscribed to that. So, you know what's really funny about this? My mom has been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. Isn't that a surprise? That's I'm not joking about that. I'm just saying, like, it fits perfectly. Like, she's very much like narcissistic and like disconnected from emotions, you know? Um, but back to Portland's. It's just a stunning city. Like, there's a mountain on the skyline. Like, I'll be riding the bus and I'll look and there's just a mountain right there and I'm like, what? Like, it's so cool. Um but no, it's been the most amazing experience. I feel like what I've gained here is I was finally able to express my femininity in a more healthy way. I was able to express my feelings. I was able to explore my sexuality. I was able to explore my identity. And since moving here, I have built the absolute best family of loving, amazing queer people. Um, I have gone from not just discovering my identity as a trans woman, but I've realized that I am polyamorous, that I am pansexual, and that I identify more as something called gender flex. So basically, what gender flex is it's kind of between a binary trans person and non-binary, and what it means is that I don't have any feelings of masculinity, but my feelings of femininity fluctuate over time. So sometimes I feel more connected to it, other times I feel less, but I kind of fluctuate in my feelings of that. Um, so that's why, like, I added they to my pronouns. Like, I typically use she, but she or they are both totally fine with me. Um, and I'm the happiest I've ever been because, like, really what I learned to embrace here is my own wants for my life, my own bodily autonomy, my own personal autonomy. And I learned that, like, it's okay to do certain things. If there's a thing you want to do, as long as you're not harming others, it's fine. Explore yourself, have fun. It's okay. And I learned to not be scared of these things anymore. Like, I'm not scared of sex. I'm not scared of these things that I thought were taboo. I'm in the kink community. Hello. Clearly, I have made a bit of progress. But it's just like I feel like I'm in the healthiest place I've ever been in. Um, and it took me being willing to break myself out of that old mindset to realize all the ways that the church, that conservatism, and that just Southern culture were being weaponized against me. How because I was trans, because I'm a part of a marginalized class, they felt like they had to keep me down as much as possible. Darth, while I've never heard of genderflux, but that describes me perfectly. Yeah, no. So the funny thing is the label genderflux actually isn't all that common still, um, but it's one that I found that really fit perfectly. As soon as I saw it, I was like, okay, well, I'm not non-binary, but I'm something else. As soon as I saw that label, I was like, that's the one, baby. Yes. Um, that explains your mom's cancer comment. If you had cancer, she would get empathy. It was all about her. No, that's the thing is, it was absolutely about her. I realized that, like, why should I live my life for people who are only living for themselves? Why should I devote all my time and energy to trying to please someone who will never be pleased? Like, it doesn't matter who they are. Why am I sitting here wasting years of my life, letting myself grow miserable and disassociated and tired of life when I could grab life by the reins and finally just accept all of these things about me? Sometimes just being a supporter can be of some harm. No, being an outcast is definitely, it is difficult. The fact that like I was completely isolated from friends. I didn't have really any support networks. I was very sensitive around people who tried to help me at first, but over time, I think I learned to kind of warm up to them more. Because like I didn't trust people because I was physically assaulted in school so much. I was gaslit by my parents. I was emotionally abused by my family. And I'm still now like processing a lot of the trauma from all that. Um, but speaking of all this, my mom sent me a message last week. And this is what has essentially made me feel that I need to cut her off completely. And that's what I've done. This message is one of the most unbelievable things I have ever seen in my life. But I want to read parts of this because this right here really, I think, shows whenever you lose connection with yourself, whenever you lose connection with reality, and it doesn't even have to be religion, but you allow certain toxic ideologies to take a hold of you, you lose yourself as a person. And you become nothing more than a vessel for these things. You lose your grasp of humanity. You lose your grasp on empathy. You lose your grasp on even the most basic ideas of like how you're supposed to treat people, of how to love others for who they are. You lose that completely. And this message is, I think it says a lot that whenever I read this, I didn't have an emotional reaction to it. Like the fact that I have emotionally distanced myself from her so much now that whenever I receive this, yes, brace yourselves. Okay, I'm going to stop stalling. Let's read. So she started out by saying, I know you've had a lot of hurt in your life, but turning against God isn't the answer. The way you are living your life is a sin. Please, with all my heart, I'm asking you to think about this, and if you can, please talk to God about it. He really does love you and wants you to spend eternity with Him in a wonderful, beautiful, peaceful heaven. But you have to accept Him as your Savior and let Him change your heart. Here's where the gaslighting comes in, okay? I miss the gentle, loving, tolerant, smart child that your dad and I loved and raised. I want you to be with us in heaven someday. I miss you and wish all the time that you could be here with us. The world is in chaos, and that is of Satan, not God. I'm making a mess. The main point of all this is that you need Jesus, sweetie. Here's more gaslighting. You weren't born to be an anarchist or atheist or a pagan. You were born to love God and be loved by Him and by us, your family. We all miss you so much. The last line is astonishing. Please take all of this in love. I love you. How do we feel about that, y'all? Be honest with me. I just, especially the line about you weren't born to be atheist or pagan or an anarchist. That is just sad. Yeah, that's a term actually called crazy making. Seriously. No, I showed this to one of my coworkers and they were like, so your mom's crazy, basically. And I'm just like, I feel like that's a little bit ableist to use that term, but it's bad. I'm like, listen, I am an anarcho-communist. I am an atheist. I am a very queer trans woman, and I'm not going to apologize for that. That's such fucking cringe. Yeah, seriously. Yeah, so my mom posted serious cringe. Like all the people on Twitter who tip like post cringe, she gets the crown for biggest cringe of the year, 2020, period. Um, Whenever I saw that, that's some bullshit. Yeah, it really is. Um, I also haven't talked to my dad in almost 3 years now, and I'm terrified to. Because I realized, like, you weren't born to be yourself and figure out anything for yourself. You were born to serve me. She's in that place. What can you do? No, seriously. Like, I kind of realized that, like, I'm never going to be able to be in a healthy place mentally. I'm never going to be able to function as like a normal human being if I maintain some connection with her, especially whenever I'm being mentally abused, when I'm being gaslit constantly, and she refuses to let it go. I was like, I can't. She's in that place. What can you do? There's nothing you can do. You were born to serve me. Yeah, absolutely. That's all it is. It's like the idea that you have to serve God. Again, whenever you talk about those beliefs being passed down to the parents believe that the child's purpose is to serve them, that the child is basically a dog that's to be trained, that you must believe everything your parents tell you to believe, and that you must be the person that your parents tell you to be, and that if you ever diverge from that at any point, then you're no longer seen as, it's almost like you're not seen as their child anymore. You're not accepted, you're not loved, and there's immediately like this barrier but like put between the two of you. Again, it's abuse. They're manipulating you. They're like, well, if you really want us to love you, maybe you wouldn't do these things, which is exactly what my mom was trying to tell me. And anarcho-communist, hello there, comrade. Hello, fellow comrade. Yeah, I've actually met a lot of really good anarcho-commies here. What has God except their own beliefs wrapped up with a Bible stamp? That's so true. Oh my God, yeah. No, basically, I feel like what religion has come down to nowadays is it's nothing more than like an excuse to be bigoted towards people. You basically feel like, well, God told me to do this and he favors me and he told me that if I do this, I'll get to go to heaven. So, hey, and they use that as a weapon to say whatever they want and they feel completely justified in it. Um, I picture it as they're basically thrashing around in a room. You can't win by playing their game. Shut the door, let them be in there by themselves. They essentially thrashed around whenever I would like be myself. Whenever I would state my opinion. Hang on. Boop. Hang on. Sorry, I've got an issue in chat. There we go. Okay. So, no, essentially, I was like, I need to live for myself. I can't allow other people to dictate how I live. I can't allow others to dictate what I believe. I can't allow others to dictate how I identify. And I was like, I'm done living for other people. I'm done completely. And it has done wonders for me as a person. Like, I feel like I have grown so tremendously in just the past year that it actually feels like for the past year, I'm actually living for the first time, Like, I kind of jokingly refer to my pre-transition life as the before times, but it literally feels like now, like I'm connected to myself. I actually enjoy life. I'm able to do what I want because I want to do it. And I don't feel like there's this like sky daddy above me who's going to throw down the axe on my head if I make one disagreeable decision. Like, I get to decide for myself who I am, where I want to go with my life, what I want to do. And there's no like judgment being placed upon me, like memory restarts. Yes, no, like literally, for the first time, it's like I have a really healthy grasp of my emotions. I feel connected to like myself, my identity, my body, my feelings. I cry a lot more now than I used to, which is totally fine. Um, Hormones are great, y'all. Listen, hormones are fucking fantastic. I love them. They have done so much good for me. My skin is super soft. My eyes are prettier now than they used to be. My hair is a lot stronger. I wouldn't take any of it back for the world. Because like I just see me now. And it's like I'm finally happy in my body. I feel normal with the way I act around other people. I'm very flirty now because like I'm totally comfortable being that way. And it's like I'm able to let all of these parts of myself out that I never felt comfortable letting out before because the church told me these things were against God. They told me these things were bad. And I finally realized it's all bullshit. Like, I get to just live for myself now. I get to give love to others. And I realized that every atheist I know is more loving than any Christian I know. Just about. Yeah. Crying is as healthy as expressing grief, experiencing it, experience emotion because it's human. Exactly. Conservatism and religion both dehumanize you because they force you to disconnect yourself from your base human feelings. They force you to ignore everything that's completely normal and healthy. They force you to ignore sexual desires. They force you to ignore your sexuality. They force you to ignore your emotions. They force you to ignore your identity. They force you to ignore all of these things that are not shameful. It's just part of what makes a human a human. But whenever you're in the middle of it, sometimes like you feel like you don't have any choice but to ignore those things. You feel like you have to fulfill this role. Um, and I'm really grateful that like I got out of that. And the thing like I really want to do now is like I want whack off save the world. Mavity, if I can put that on a bumper sticker, like I would absolutely do that. That's amazing. Someone snapshot that comment in the chat. That's the comment of the night right there. Um no. And I have a post that I found from Reddit that I put up. When did I put a year ago? Um this post I think will be a really good kind of like wrap up for all of this to where it talks about everything that I came through and like where I am now mentally and emotionally. I'm gonna read this to y'all, and I feel like this is. I actually haven't read this since I posted it, so I'm gonna be reacting to this as I read it, and y'all will get to hear this for the first time too. Where basically it was an emotional post or an inspirational post I put in one of the trans threads on Reddit to try to help people with some of the things that I had learned from the beginning of my transition to that point in my life. So this is a little something I wrote, and it goes. So, and what it was a before and after photo. It was a photo of me before my transition, and then a photo of me from a year ago. So I rarely, if ever, look at photos of myself from pre-2018 because it reminds me of the deep, indescribable pain and emptiness I used to feel daily. But whenever I look at these two photos side by side, it's wild to me because I realize that these are two completely different people. One felt completely disconnected from themselves and those around them. I definitely struggled with disassociation and depression and had no true desire to live, pursue goals, cultivate deep, rich relationships, or figure out how to love themselves. The only feeling was a deep, gnawing sense that everything was wrong. Instead of facing it, I'd essentially given up on myself, on life, on happiness, existence, all of it. Now, fast forward to today, to the woman I am now and had always been deep down inside. For the first time in my life, I'm happy, whole, and feel a true sense of belonging in my body, with my emotions and sense of self, in others' lives and in the world. The missing puzzle piece fell into place, and it's as if life has finally begun. All of my feelings are vivid, deep, colorful, overwhelming, and wholly welcomed. I love myself, my life, my loved ones around me, And I have an unquenchable desire to shower love and validation over every single person I meet, especially my siblings in the trans community and the LGBTQ community in general, of course. I want to experience profound, intense platonic and intimate relationships. I want to build a life I could be proud of. I want to make a difference for those I love and love too. I want to give back to the community that saved my life. Without you all, there's a chance I wouldn't have been around today. And I mean that. When I discovered myself, a Pandora's box was open that could never again be shut. And the only choice I had left, the one thing I knew I had to do, was transition and become myself at long last. I know how it feels to wish life, as you know it, could just come to an end. I know what it's like to never be able to escape the horrid, soul-crushing loneliness when you shut yourself away from others. All because you can't stand yourself, your body, your voice, and this identity you know isn't you. But you're terrified of what could happen if you choose to take that first step towards the other side, towards freedom, towards finally understanding yourself on the deepest, most powerful level. You don't want to lose your family, friends, livelihood, home, life. This is the only stability you've ever known, and what isn't known scares the hell out of you. But if you're in this position right now, I want you to ask yourself one thing. Are you willing to live the rest of your life or the rest of your existence in regret and never know what could have happened if you had done one of the bravest things any human being could do? To love and accept yourself as you are completely and fully? Could you really love yourself or live with yourself if you chose to please others instead of yourself, no matter how much it hurt and drained you? Are you willing to let others' opinions of you dictate who you choose to be? Or would you rather have full control over your life, the choices you make for your body, mental, physical, and spiritual health, your identity, sexuality, morals, belief system, all of it? I was getting fired up here. No one else on this planet can choose for you. Only you have the power to discover your true self and make your life what you've always wanted and or needed it to be. This is the only life we have. This is the only time we will ever be able to share our experiences and love with one another. This is the only community we will ever have. And this community and family will always have your back. We will always love and accept you. We will always validate your existence and identity. We will always see you as a beautiful, strong human being, and we will never, ever abandon you. Family is forever, and this family is one that I will forever be grateful for. I love every single one of you, always will, and will fight tirelessly to make sure you never, ever feel like something is wrong with you. Because nothing is wrong with you. You're in a process of figuring yourself out. And with that process comes pain, confusion, loneliness, anxiety, but most of all, growth. Every dot you connect pushes you closer to becoming, you know, you. And everything will become clear before you know it. Just keep going. Don't give up on yourself. A day will come when you look back and thank that person you used to be for choosing to keep living instead of ending it all. When you choose to love and fight for yourself, nothing is impossible. I've lived this lesson, and I can attest to how true it is. And every bit of what I wrote there is just as true now as it was. Or it's just as true, yeah, as it was then. The most powerful thing you can do is love yourself. The most powerful thing you could ever do is choose to live for yourself, to not let anyone else dictate who you are. The reason that I identify as anarcho-communist is because I want to see a society that fights for everyone, that puts everyone on the same level playing field and removes every single hierarchical power structure that's currently in place that has done nothing but hold us down, keep us in place, and try to force us into these arbitrary roles that mean absolutely nothing. Before the Industrial Revolution, before capitalism, these things that they say are so incredibly important to us now don't mean anything. They've just fooled all of us into believing that they do. But I want to see a society where every single person has the same ability to pursue the life they want, to essentially be able to embrace their autonomy, to be valued, to be able to work if they choose to work on something that brings them joy, that they believe brings value to themselves and to society. Best form of resistance is to live unapologetically authentic and demand the same ability be available to all others. No, exactly. Like, this is what really pushed me to anarchism, is because I want every single person alive to have the same, basically start at the same point in society, to have no governing body over them, to have no form of like systematic oppression pushed against them. Like, I do think that even in an anarchist society, some forms of oppression will still pop up at some point. I don't believe in the whole idea of like utopia. Utopias are not going to happen ever. Oppression will always exist in one form or another, but this sort of society would better prepare us for dealing with that. Um, and I absolutely think it's the most important thing in the world that everyone be respected, that everyone be able to live how they want, to live in whatever fashion they want, to identify how they want, to love who they want, to essentially have the ability to just be them. That's incredibly important to me. And it was one of the, honestly, probably one of the biggest things that drove me to starting this channel in the first place is like, I want to be a voice for my community. And if there's anything at all I can ever do, any good, like good energy and inspiration I can give out to people, I've seen what happens when you're finally able to escape indoctrination. Whenever you finally understand the difference between healthy ideologies, between healthy political systems, and the kinds that will inevitably be used to crush you into nothing. Um, and if there's anything I can do on here to like dispel myths and stereotypes, like I want to do that. And like y'all, I don't say this enough, but y'all really have been such a huge part in like why I'm doing this. Like I'm here as a part of this community. I'm not just one person doing this. There's so many of us out there, and like I feel like especially over the past few weeks, I've really seen my place in the wider community, and I couldn't be more grateful for it. Like I really couldn't. It's incredible to be able to have an opportunity to just like share your voice, share your life stories, the things that you've learned, your views on the world, and to be able to learn from others, to be able to grow from those relationships, and really see yourself as a part of a larger movement. Like it only energizes you to fight harder. And I think especially nowadays, like if you feel like you have a voice or things you want to say, get out there and say them. Don't let anything hold you back. Like this is one of the best times we have ever had. The fact that we have these platforms and we have these abilities to like share so much. Moved to Portland but still haven't escaped the y'all. You know what, Guapo? I pretty much embraced the y'all. One of my friends actually commented, she was like, it's really cute how you say y'all so much. And I'm like, it's just me. What are you gonna do? Yeah, basically to wrap this up, I thank y'all, honestly, for your support, your love, your constant encouragement. Like every one of you mean the world to me, and I'm so grateful that like I get to share this space with you. Um, and I get to share my voice, and like the fact that it's having an impact is still surreal to me. But like I realize that these are very universal things I'm saying. And y'all is totally gender inclusive. Y'all is totally gender inclusive. See, look at that. I am being respectful of pronouns. Y'all works perfectly. I don't say guys, I say y'all. So there you go. But thank y'all. Your support means the world. I am so excited to see like what the rest of the year is gonna bring. I swear I feel more energized every day. I can't wait to like meet more creators, to like be able to build those relationships, to learn from them, and just see where it goes. I'm just here for the ride. And all of you who have supported me, who have subscribed, who have shared my videos, who have stayed in the chat and watched the whole time, y'all really are the reason I do this. I love y'all. I appreciate you more than I can say. And I'm here for you. I'm here for you. I do this for you. Um, if there's anything you ever want me to cover, you can find me. So I'm on Twitter, Alice_Evelyn_. You can leave comments on one of my videos. Feel free anytime to like message me or comment me ideas, and I am more than happy to look into them. But yeah, that is my coming out story. This is how I you're appreciated too. I appreciate you too, Guapo. Like seriously, y'all are the best. You really are. This is how I got to where I am now. And I think this will give you like some background on like why I advocate for the things I advocate for. Like this is basically what inspired me to be so passionate about the politics I'm passionate about. So that's me. Y'all now know me a little bit better. I'm gonna get off of here and I'm gonna make myself some more tea. But you're awesome too, Under the Thunder. I love y'all. Yeah, Mabity. Hey, I'm gonna message you after this, definitely. Hey, thank y'all for sticking around. It's been an hour and 40 minutes, but y'all are still here. You do not know what that means to me. Thank you so much, every one of you. Y'all take care of yourselves, okay? Especially with COVID going around. Stay well, stay healthy. I'm going to try to do the same. I'm actually, before y'all go, I have a little announcement. I will be moving to a new place in May. So this setup, I'm going to officially be retiring this set soon. It's kind of sad. Like this is the set that I started with my first video. And this will forever be like the genesis of my channel is this set. But I will be moving in a few weeks. I'm going to have a new set. I'm about to order a new microphone so I can have better sound quality. I'm going to commission someone to make an animated intro for my videos. So it's just all up and up from here, y'all. Average viewer, thank you so much. I'm excited to see where this goes from here too. I hope you'll stick around for the rest of the journey. But yeah, y'all, questing refuge. I love you. I'll be on Discord shortly, probably. But yeah, y'all have a good night. Okay, take care of each other. Stay well, and I will be seeing y'all soon. Okay, take care. Bye. It's not ending. I'm hitting the, oh, there we go. All right. Bye, y'all. I'm literally hitting, oh my God, this is embarrassing. I'm hitting the end stream button and it won't end.